At 42 years old, Danielle Clause lived in the Miners Oaks community of Ventura County, California. She was a talented and artistic writer known for her poetry, but unfortunately, she had a 15-year-long addiction to cocaine and heroin. However, by 1990, she was now in recovery and also studying drug and alcohol counseling at Vista Del Mar Adult School. On July 15, 1991, Danielle was last seen talking to a man in a white pickup truck with pinstripes. When she failed to return home that night, her husband reported her missing. The following day, a landscaping crew installing sprinklers at the end of Tioga Drive found Danielle's partially unclothed body. Her body was in a flood control catch basin, and evidence revealed she had been sexually assaulted and killed by blunt force trauma to the head. A large rock at the scene was identified as the likely murder weapon. Investigators collected significant evidence from the scene, including fingerprints, cigarette butts, and items indicating a struggle. However, despite their efforts, the case went cold and remained unsolved for 33 years. In 2021, Detective Tyler Buck reopened Danielle's case, utilizing advancements in forensic technology and preserved evidence, including Danielle's fingernail clippings and the rock used in the attack. Forensic specialists confirmed a single suspect's DNA profile matched evidence from the sexual assault kit and other items found at the scene. Using forensic genetic genealogy, investigators constructed a family tree to narrow down potential suspects. By July 2022, they had identified Larry Welch as a possible suspect. Welch, who had died in 1999, fit the suspect's profile. He owned a white Ford Ranger, had a P.O. box in Ventura at the time of the murder, and was reportedly seen with Danielle near the crime scene the night she disappeared. Detectives obtained a DNA sample from his surviving brother in Virginia to confirm Welch's involvement. That DNA conclusively identified Larry Welch as the source of the DNA found at the crime scene. Welch had no known connection to Danielle, highlighting the chillingly random nature of the crime. Danielle's sister, Marcy Forte, shared the emotional toll the murder had taken on her family, recalling the devastating moment she saw her sister's unrecognizable remains. She expressed relief that after decades of uncertainty, the case had finally been solved. Diana Marie Peterson, who went by Dina, was born on July 19, 1958. At just 16 years old, she was a spirited sophomore at Shoreline High School in Shoreline, Washington, cherished by her close-knit family. Tragically, her life was brutally cut short on Valentine's Day, 1975. On the evening of February 14th, Diana was at home watching television with a friend and her 16-year-old neighbor, James Groth, who went by Jim. Later that night, at about 9:30 p.m., she and her friend walked to a pizza restaurant 3 blocks away while Groth stayed behind. At one point, Diana's mother walked downstairs and was startled to find him there. He explained that he decided to wait for the girls to return. After the encounter, he left. At 10:30 p.m., Diana's mother heard her return, but then minutes later, she heard 2 abrupt screams from the backyard. She looked outside and saw the shadow of her daughter apparently wrestling with someone and thought they were just messing around. She yelled out the window for Diana to keep it down but didn't get a response, so she walked outside, but by the time she got out there, she didn't see anyone. She figured Diana had snuck out to visit a friend's house or to see her boyfriend, 19-year-old Tim Diner, who lived next door. Tim's house was known for being a teenage hangout spot with lots of parties in the basement where he lived. Since Diana had a habit of sneaking out, her parents weren't too concerned when she didn't come home that night. The following morning at 6 a.m., her father, George, let the family dog out of the house and noticed the dog ran immediately around the side of the house, so he decided to follow. That's when he discovered his daughter's lifeless body. She had been stabbed a single time with a bone-handled hunting knife, which was still embedded in her back. The stab, which caused her lung to collapse, was described as vicious and angry, reflecting an overwhelming sense of rage. The investigation initially focused on Tim, who owned a knife matching the murder weapon. However, he was with a friend until 11 p.m. that night, an alibi that investigators were able to confirm. However, that didn't stop them from arresting him and seizing the clothes and boots he was wearing that day. However, without any evidence to keep him, he was released the following day. Attention then shifted to Groth, who had a history of inappropriate behavior toward Diana. He was infatuated with her, had reportedly peeped into her bedroom window in the past, and was known to be jealous of her relationship with Tim. Friends would say that he often called Diana names behind her back and never denied the peeping Tom incident. When investigators spoke with Groff, he said that after leaving Diana's house around 10 p.m., he went to the bowling alley before arriving back home sometime after 12:30 a.m. He said he checked on Tim's house on his way home and found him asleep. However, investigators noticed he had visible scratches on his arms, so they asked him to take a polygraph test, to which he agreed. After failing the test, he changed his story, telling investigators that he left the bowling alley at about 10:10 p.m., checked on Tim's house, and found no one there. He said he cut through the Petersons' backyard on his way home, and that's when he found Diana's body. He said he noticed she had been stabbed by a knife that belonged to Tim. As to why he didn't call the police or notify her parents, he said he was afraid he would be accused of the crime. About 6 weeks later, Groth got into an altercation with Eric Hansen, who was working at a Seattle Times newspaper shack. Groth pushed Eric and knocked his glasses off. Eric then threatened to tell Groth's father, to which he replied, and I quote, "I've killed a girl and I can kill again." Despite all the circumstantial evidence, Groth was never arrested. Then, in 1987, much of the physical evidence, including crucial forensic materials, was destroyed, with only the murder weapon remaining. However, the murder weapon had yielded no usable fingerprints or DNA. It would then take over 30 years before an actual arrest was made. Tim was asked about the knife and said that all the kids on the block knew about it and that anyone could have taken it because he always left his basement door unlocked and people were always coming and going. In 2006, Detective Jim Allen reopened the investigation. Using witness testimonies, Groth's inconsistent statements, and re-examining the evidence, Allen identified Groth as the likely killer. He also interviewed Tim Diner, but met with resistance because Diana's murder had ruined his life due to the constant cloud of suspicion surrounding him. He had grown bitter against law enforcement because of this. He was also diagnosed with terminal liver cancer and died in 2009. He was ultimately cleared as a suspect before he died. As for Groth, he had accumulated a history of domestic violence with an assault conviction in 1985 and 1996 and a theft conviction in 1998. Finally, in December of 2007, Groth was arrested and charged with Diana's murder. During his 2009 trial, prosecutors presented his infatuation with Diana, his erratic behavior, and the scratches on his arms as indicators of his guilt. They were also able to show that the shoe prints found in the backyard belonged to both Diana and Groth. In the end, he was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 200 months. Mary Dolores Tracy was born on October 22, 1955, and was known as a compassionate and spirited young woman. At 25 years old, she lived in Boise, Idaho with her 2 children, Angela and Christy, and her husband, Marvin Tracy. Mary was under a lot of stress due to their financial struggles and her crumbling marriage. If things weren't already bad enough, in the summer of 1980, a horrible tragedy occurred. On June 24th, Mary disappeared from an area near Shindind Boulevard in Garden City, Idaho. This area was known for its bars, nightclubs, and adult bookstores. She was on her way to meet a friend, but never arrived. After being reported missing, witnesses came forward and reported seeing Mary engaged in a heated argument with a man on a motorcycle. Investigators then uncovered a possible connection to Mary at the Sunliner Motel. There, a maid told police she found and cleaned up a significant amount of blood in one of the rooms. 2 days later, on June 26, 1980, Mary's body was discovered by a highway crew in a remote area along Highway 55, close to what is now the Shadow Valley Golf Course. She had been sexually assaulted, struck in the back of the head, and stabbed to death. She was also found with a bloody fingerprint on her back, though it was not usable for analysis. It was theorized that she was murdered in the motel room and then her body was dumped near milepost 50 on Highway 55. Unfortunately, they were unable to identify a suspect, and the case would go unsolved for over 40 years. In 2023, with advancements in DNA technology, the sexual assault kit obtained in 1980 was used to identify the suspect as Charles Nicholas Strain. Strain, who had a violent criminal history across the Pacific Northwest, lived in Garden City at the time of Mary's murder. He had allegedly confessed to an acquaintance in a nightclub that he killed a woman around the same time Mary's body was discovered. Strain's crimes extended beyond Mary's murder. He was convicted in 1981 for the murder of his stepdaughter, Deanna Dean, and sentenced to 5 years to life in prison. In 2007, he died while still incarcerated. In October 2024, Mary's case was officially closed, bringing a bittersweet resolution to her friends and family. Regardless of the case being closed, authorities continued to seek additional information to understand the full circumstances surrounding Mary's death. They are particularly interested in anyone who worked at the Sunliner Motel during the summer of 1980 or in locating a woman named Lisa, who was a friend of Mary's and may have been one of the last people to see her alive. For decades, a terrible secret lay hidden within the walls of an ordinary Orangevale, California home. It was revealed in 2021 when a new homeowner began renovating an outbuilding on the property. During the work, a shocking discovery came to light. Inside a wall were Polaroid photographs and videotapes depicting inappropriate materials involving children. This discovery would ultimately unravel a chilling story of betrayal and long-hidden crimes. After making the discovery, the new homeowner quickly called the police. Once investigators were involved, it didn't take them long to identify the suspects as 90-year-old Theodore Smith and his son, 66-year-old James Smith, who had lived on the property for over 40 years. Investigators also began reviewing the materials and tracking down the children from the images. They were surprised to find that none of the victims ever spoke of the abuse and had kept their trauma hidden from even their closest family members. The investigation expanded to Alto, Texas, where the father and son had relocated. A search of their new property revealed even more inappropriate materials involving children. Despite the statute of limitations preventing charges for crimes committed before 1988, prosecutors uncovered enough evidence of abuse occurring afterward to file criminal charges. Among the findings were indications that Theodore and James had conspired together in some of the abuse, with James continuing the abuse as recently as after 2010. In October 2021, the Smiths were apprehended. James was caught traveling back to California with more explicit materials in his possession. The scope of their crimes, their calculated planning, and the positions of trust they exploited came to light during court proceedings. On November 13, 2024, both men entered pleas in a Sacramento courtroom. Theodore Smith admitted to 11 counts of forcible lewd acts on a child and 3 counts of lewd acts. James Smith pleaded no contest to 2 counts of lewd acts, admitting to targeting multiple victims. In the end, Theodore was sentenced to 100 years in prison, ensuring he would spend the rest of his life behind bars, while James only received 23 years to life. Jennifer Sheffield was born on September 9, 1994, to parents Eileen and Gilbert Murillo. Jennifer was a beautiful and radiant spirit who was passionate about helping those around her. By late 2024, she was a mother of 2 young girls, with the youngest daughter's father being her current husband of 10 years, Brendan Sheffield, who she was currently in the middle of a divorce from. Jennifer was very educated, having earned a bachelor's degree in biochemistry and a master's degree in medical biochemistry, and was currently working on her master's degree in medical sciences at Mississippi College. On December 9th, Jennifer posted a TikTok video where she discussed her divorce. She spoke highly of Brandon, despite their decision to end their marriage.
My husband is being incredible, though. Like, really and truly, like, we are we're working together. Everything's great. We're splitting everything down the middle. Like, you know, everything is good. It is a very civil divorce with our daughter in mind, and I really appreciate that.
She described him as incredible and noted that they were working together amicably and focusing on co-parenting their daughter. That is, until a horrible tragedy occurred in December of 2024. On December 28th, at around 7 a.m., family members called 911, reporting obvious signs of foul play at their home. When officers arrived, they found both Jennifer and Brandon dead from a gunshot wound. It was quickly determined that Brandon had fatally shot Jennifer and turned the gun on himself. Their daughter was reportedly inside the home during the incident, but details about her condition have not been released publicly.